On today's episode, I'll break down the Blackhawks' speed being on display against the Penguins and an update on the OHL Playoffs.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How we doing, Blackhawks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Do me a quick favor, right off the rip, make sure to go and hit that like button. Hop in the comment section below as well. Mailbag Monday going down here today. Won't be able to answer those questions on today's show, but I'll make sure to bookmark them and answer them this time next week. And last but certainly not least, please subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. It's 100% free, will not cost you anything, and helps me out in a massive way as I'm now on the climb to 3,000 subscribers. But happy Monday, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. 3-1 win for the Blackhawks last night over the Pittsburgh Penguins to put an end to their 5-game losing skid and also pick up their first win here in the month of April. Before I get there, though, Blackhawks fans, I do have to take a quick moment to congratulate the Great Eight, Alexander Ovechkin, for officially surpassing Wayne Gretzky's all-time NHL goals record, scoring number 895 yesterday afternoon against the New York Islanders. And for us Blackhawks fans, we were obviously on Scare Friday night, considering Ovechkin needed a hat trick to break that record. He gets a goal early on in the first period, gets another one early on in the third, and it was like, oh boy, here we go. And Spencer Knight actually had to make some incredible saves there in the final moments to keep Ovi tied with the great one, but we knew it wasn't going to take much longer. Does it the very next game. Ovechkin, now all alone in NHL history, the most goals scored of all time. Congratulations to Alex Ovechkin. As someone who really kind of got into hockey fandom right when Ovechkin and Sidney Crosby were breaking onto the scene, it's been so cool to follow along throughout this entire ride. And I mean, to break a Wayne Gretzky record is truly one of the best accomplishments, in my opinion, in all of professional sports. And shoot, I mean, this is a guy in Alex Ovechkin. I know he's got a lot of miles on those tires, and he is going to turn 40 years old in September, but looks like there's no signs of slowing down for this guy. Well on track to potentially pot 50 again here this season. He's got at least 40 goals in three of the last 4 years. Like, this guy has shown no signs of slowing down. I saw that, I think it was Dylan Strome or TJ Oshie after the game mentioned they think he can hit 900 before this season comes to a close, and I wouldn't put it past the guy. And shoot, with the way he's still scoring at this clip, the one-timer is still an absolute rocket. Doesn't seem like he's slowing down, right, Blackhawks fans? I would not be surprised to see Alex Ovechkin be on the precipice of scoring 1,000 goals, which, holy jumping, that would be an incredible record in and alone of itself. In addition to breaking a Wayne Gretzky record, it's going to be a lot of fun to continue to watch Ovi for however long he decides to go. But just a super cool moment to see that happen yesterday. And also for Wayne Gretzky to be in attendance and make good on his promise to be, I don't know if he was actually the first one, but he said he was going to be the first one to shake Alex Ovechkin's hand. I'm sure there were a lot of handshakes going on for Ovi on the ice before that point in time. But for Wayne to keep his word, to be there in attendance and be so gracious to Alex and also his wife and their entire family, just as he said that Gordie Howe was to him when he broke that record. And I thought it was super cool to see the video of Wayne Gretzky talking about after he broke Gordie Howe's record, his dad coming up to him and saying, hey, there's going to be another kid that comes along one day that's going to break your record, and you make sure you treat him as great and as gracefully as Gordie Howe treated you. And for Wayne to be able to be there in that moment, it just shows the beauty in the game of hockey. I think put a smile on lots of sports fans' faces across the world, not even just hockey fans. Super, super cool stuff for Alex Ovechkin, the grade 8. Excited to see what he can get to by the end of this year's regular season, and also whatever he's going to get to by the end of his assuredly first ballot Hall of Fame career. One more congratulations to Alex Ovechkin, now the greatest goal scorer in NHL history, even though I would have given him that tag had he have not broken Wayne Gretzky's record. But now that he did, there's no debating that whatsoever. But on to the Blackhawks. As I mentioned, last night, a real nice 3-1 win over the Pittsburgh Penguins, sending me and lots of other Hawks fans in attendance home very happy in the second to last game at the United Center here this season. Honestly, it was a pretty low event and quick game through the opening 40 minutes. I mean, there were like no whistles whatsoever, no penalties called until the final moments of the second period. Super fast-paced game. I believe the opening 2 periods, the game started at 5 p.m. Central Time, and the second period was over by like 6:30 or 6:40 or something absolutely crazy. I was home by 8:15 Central Time. It was absolutely wild, but no penalties, like I said, up until the final minutes of the second period, had things moving pretty quickly. I feel like the officials, knowing where both of these two teams are at in the standings, not much to play for here at the end of the year. They were swallowing the whistles out there on the ice yesterday, which didn't make me all that upset. But no penalties until the final minutes of the second, and no goals in this game until the final moments of the second as well, up until my boy, Frank the Tank Nazar, showed off his wheels to score on a shorthanded breakaway, his 9th tally of the season. 5 games left on the schedule, and some of you probably remember on an episode I talked about probably 2 weeks ago at this point in time, I gave some goals to some of the Blackhawks youngsters that I'd like to see them accomplish before the season comes to a close. The one I gave to Frank Nazar was for him to hit that 10-goal plateau. He's now just 1 tally away, but I thought Nazar was incredible yesterday in lots of different ways. But the biggest thing that just continues to stand out about this kid, Blackhawks fans, it's the wheels. It's the wheels. He absolutely flies out there on the ice. His top speed has to be among the fastest in the entire NHL, and he uses that speed and that acceleration in so many different ways to make plays all over the ice as a puck carrier to enter the offensive zone with speed, which is something the Blackhawks have really struggled with this season. And then we also see it on the defensive side of the game as well, which is why I do believe Frank Nazar, despite being undersized, has a good chance at playing the center ice position because his range spans so far out there on the ice with what he could do because of his skating ability. And we've seen him generate so many breakaway opportunities or odd man rushes for himself or his team over the last month or two since he's been up in the NHL full time. The problem has been getting the finished product. Finally, we saw that out of Frankie to kick off the scoring here for the Blackhawks. Would love for him to get at least one more goal and reach double digits for the first time as an NHLer. It was also the first non-Ilya Mikheyev shorthanded goal that we saw from the Blackhawks this year. And quite honestly, Blackhawks fans, because of the speed and defensive prowess of both Frank Nazar and Oliver Moore, I think this is a team that's going to be having a lot of shorthanded breakaways moving forward because of the speed and the defensive ability that those two forwards play the game with. But really, it was the speed that was on display as I talked about right off the jump, and also what I believe made a difference for the Blackhawks in this low-scoring affair. Not only did we see it on Frank Nazar's opening goal, but we also saw it with Ilya Mikheyev as well to put the Blackhawks ahead 2-0. Great recognition as well by Connor Bedard in the neutral zone, recognizing that he doesn't have a lot of speed to enter the O zone with, but you know who does? It's Ilya Mikheyev absolutely racing down the right boards. Bedard notices that the defenseman covering him is a little bit flat-footed. Mikheyev's gonna win that foot race. Perfect speed to set up Mikheyev entering the zone with speed. He makes a nice move to put it past Nedeljkovic, puts the Blackhawks ahead 2-0 with his 19th goal of the year. And then Mikheyev, for good measure, went on to add the empty netter for his second goal of the game and 20th tally of the season, just the second time in his NHL career that he's potted 20 goals. He just remains such an underappreciated, even though he's been scoring more goals and winding up on the stat sheet more and more here in the second half of the season, really all year long. Ilya Mikheyev and Ryan Donato have been the most consistent two-way players for the Blackhawks, and Mikheyev has really been showing it on the offensive side of things here to close out the season, which has been awesome. And what I love about Mikheyev as well is, like Frank Nazar, like Oliver Moore, he's really responsible on the defensive side of things. He can play on the penalty kill, as we know, because of his shorthanded breakaways and also the great work that he does defensively. But that speed that he plays with, the Blackhawks just need more of that in their lineup. They've been starting to get more of that with all these kids stepping onto the scene. And you can just tell when watching this team, they have more upside. They have more creativity. They're capable of more because they have more skaters in their lineup. Ilya Mikheyev is one of those skaters, though, in the first half of the year when this team really had nothing going offensively. He was one of the few guys that could skate into the offensive zone with speed. And I know there was a lot of flack towards the coaching staff when Mikheyev initially got bumped up with Connor Bedard, but I was always like, wait a minute. This is one of the few guys who actually has the speed to play with Bedsy. He's a really good skater in terms of he can start and stop fast. He's very shifty, and he makes heads-up passes. And he's really made the most of that momentum and finished off this year on a high note. Kyle Davidson just continues to make great deals with the Vancouver Canucks in terms of salary cap dumps. But another phenomenal game from Ilya Mikheyev here. 2-goal performance to lead the Blackhawks to this 3-1 victory. Connor Bedard with the primary assist on that goal. Frank Nazar showing off the wheels as well for a shorthanded breakaway goal. Couple final shout-outs that I do got to give to a couple of kids as well, Blackhawks fans. Sam Rinzel netted his first NHL point yesterday with the secondary assist on Mikheyev's game-winning goal. Also tallied 20 minutes of time on ice for the 4th consecutive game, been above 20 in every game he's played in the NHL now. I do think Rinzel's debut was the most noteworthy performance he's had so far, and I do think when just watching him in person at the UC last night, there are still some decisions that he makes that he has to clean up upon a little bit. And in terms of like his passing and breakout passes, I think things just need to be crisper. Even on that play where he got the secondary assist, it wasn't necessarily like a clean defensive zone exit. It was kind of a risky breakout pass. Fortunately, it went his way. But the size and the skating ability, the rover style that Rinzel can play back there, kind of similar to Artie Levshinov, along with his offensive IQ, it's very, very noticeable. And I like that he's handled this top pairing role basically right out of college pretty well. So I'm encouraged by what I've seen out of Sam Rinzel. I thought Artie Levshinov, even though he didn't have a point yesterday, had a really solid game as well. Super cool to see these youngsters, high-end youngsters, both on the NHL scene right now for the Blackhawks. Congratulations to Rinzel for tallying his first NHL point. Also really like how aggressive he is with the puck on his stick. Like Levshinov as well, he's really trying to put the puck on cage. He has at least 5 shot attempts in all 4 games he's played, and at least 2 shots on goal as well. So good stuff out of Sam Rinzel. Hopefully he keeps that up and finishes off the year on a high note. Another guy I'm hoping finishes off the year on a high note is Spencer Knight. He was outstanding in goal last night. Really was hoping I was going to be witness to his first shutout as a member of the Blackhawks. The Penguins struck on a penalty there, on a power play, there, late in the 3rd period to cut the Blackhawks deficit in half. Kind of seemed to be a questionable penalty call on Tyler Bertuzzi for the Pens to even get that opportunity. But that was all Pittsburgh was able to put by Spencer Knight. And I thought in the opening 30-35 minutes in particular was when he played his best, but stopped 28 of 29 shots faced on the game. And he now has at least a .935 save percentage in 2 of his last 3 outings. Has kind of righted the ship here nicely in the past week after a little bit of a bump in the road there to close out the month of March. But there are my thoughts on the Blackhawks picking up a much needed 2 points over the Pittsburgh Penguins yesterday, beating them 3-1. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, I'll get into an OHL playoff update with numerous Blackhawks prospects making the 2nd round. But first, real quick, I got to talk to you all about Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. But that's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and complete control over your finances. And Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center so that you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, and you can stop just managing your money and start building wealth. And what I personally love about Monarch Money is that instead of juggling multiple financial apps at the same time, you can just use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan your long-term goals. So go and take control, of your finances right now with Monarch Money by using the code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps at monarchmoney.com, and you'll get 50% off on your first year. Again, that's monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps for half off on your first year. Segment 2, time to get into an OHL playoff update as the first round has officially come to a close, and only one team with a Blackhawks prospect saw their season come to an end in the opening round, with that being Alex Ovechkin of the Sudbury Wolves, as they were swept to the hands of the Kingston Frontenacs in the first round. So for Ovechkin, his junior career comes to a close. 2023 fourth round pick, finished his final OHL season with 59 points, 17 goals, and 42 assists in 65 games. New career highs for him in assists by double, actually. His previous career best was 21, wound up with 42 apples this season, and also a new career high in points as well by 20. His previous best was 39. Sadly, missed out on a new career high in goals by 2, but a phenomenal final OHL season for Alex Ovechkin, who turned 20 back in January. Has some good size to him, 6'3", 192 pounds. As a winger, I don't think he's ever someone that has like true, legitimate, high-end NHL upside, but I do think maybe there's a chance as a bottom 6, fourth liner, outside type of chance though for Ovechkin. I don't think he's going to be getting an entry-level contract for the Blackhawks. That seems far-fetched. But I do think he's done enough to potentially work out a deal with the Rockford IceHogs. We'll see what winds up happening next for the 99th overall selection in the 2023 NHL draft, but he is the only Blackhawks prospect in the OHL who's already had their season come to a close. Next, Nick Lardis, Marek Vanacker, and the one-seeded Brantford Bulldogs took care of business in the opening round against the 8th-seeded North Bay Battalion, winning the series 4-1 to move on to the second round. For Nick Lardis, it's been just exactly what he was doing in the regular season so far in the OHL playoffs. 9 goals for him in the opening 5 games, including 7 goals. One of them was an unbelievable through the legs maneuver. Go and check it out on X if you haven't done so already. I made sure to pump it out on my Talkin' Hockey account. Hat trick for Nick Lardis to close out the opening round. Just doing what he does best, and that's finding the back of the net. Marek Vanacker had a pretty strong opening round as well. As I've mentioned a couple of different times, was a slow start to the season for him coming off of an injury, but definitely picked it up as the season progressed. He tallied 2 goals and 3 assists for 5 points in 5 games during the opening round. Then that takes us out east in the OHL playoffs, where we get the 2-seeded Windsor Spitfires, and AJ Spellacy, 2024 third-round pick for the Blackhawks, was a standout during training camp, of course, and wound up staying along with the team much longer than anyone anticipated. There were even some rumblings about, hey, maybe this kid could sign his ELC and play pro hockey right away. That could be a conversation for AJ Spellacy and the Blackhawks here in the offseason, but won't be happening just yet as Windsor defeated the Sioux Greyhounds 4-1 in the opening round. AJ Spellacy, though, Blackhawks fans, did not play in the final 3 games of that series, and I perused the internet, peruse social media. I could not find anything official on Spellacy, whether this was an injury or he was getting healthy scratch, but considering the type of impact he plays for this team and the role that he has, also a good defensive-minded player as well with great speed, like as an upperclassman leader, I'd be shocked if AJ Spellacy was getting healthy scratched in the OHL playoffs. So I'm guessing he's dealing with a little bit of an injury right now, but again, I couldn't find anything official. If someone who's watching this or listening to this happens to know what happened to AJ Spellacy, what the injury is per se, please make sure to let me know in the comment section, because I would love to figure out what he's dealing with. 3 points, though, for Spellacy, 1 goal and 2 assists in the 2 games that he did play in the opening round. We'll see if he'll be healthy enough to suit up for round 2. Next, we got Jack Pridham in the 3-seeded Kitchener Rangers out east, who also like Nick Lardis and the Bulldogs, like AJ Spellacy and the Spitfires, took care of business, winning their opening round series 4-1 against Flint, with Jack Pridham continuing on his point-per-game pace, 3 goals and 2 assists for 5 games so far for Pridham in the OHL playoffs. And last, that takes us to Martin Misiak, Ty Henry, and the Erie Otters, who also beat the Saginaw Spirit in the first round 4-1 in 5 games. Martin Misiak, though, Blackhawks fans, I talked a couple of weeks ago, he finished out the regular season on a really nice run. That continued through the opening round. How about this, Blackhawks fans? 12 points for Martin Misiak, 7 goals and 5 assists in 5 games in the opening round, including a hat trick. I think he had 2 4-point performances. Absolutely on fire right now to lead the charge offensively for this Otters bunch. Hopefully that keeps up. Martin Misiak, I don't know if he's ever going to have the highest offensive upside at the next level, but I do think he's a capable middle 6 to bottom 6 type of guy who can provide some goal scoring for you, maybe a little bit in the playmaking ability, but has some good size and plays a responsible defensive-minded game as well. I definitely think he's someone who's going to be getting his entry-level contract here in the future with the Blackhawks based on how he's finished off this season. Well, I mean, it's not come to a close yet, but based on how Martin Misiak has been playing in the most meaningful time of the season, I think that ELC could be coming his way here rather soon. Ty Henry, 1 assist in 5 games for the Blackhawks, 2024 6th-round pick, known as a defensive-minded defenseman, so not really going to judge him off of his point totals, but they'll be continuing on in the second round. Tough matchup, though, for the London Knights in round 2. They'll be taking on the top-seeded London Knights in the second round. Erie versus London in round 2. 1-seeded Knights versus the 5-seeded Otters. Can Martin Misiak stay hot to pull off an incredible upset? He'll probably need to if the Otters want any hopes of taking down the London Knights. Then we get a Blackhawks prospect battle in the second round out east with the Windsor Spitfires and AJ Spellacy taking on Jack Pridham and the Kitchener Rangers. That should be a phenomenal matchup. 2-seeded Windsor versus 3-seeded Kitchener. I'll keep you all up to date whenever we get an update from AJ Spellacy. And then last, the top-seeded Brantford Bulldogs out in the west, They'll be taking on the Oshawa Generals in the second round. So lots of Blackhawks prospects still playing in the most meaningful time of the season out in the OHL. I'll make sure to cover each of these series right here on Locked On Blackhawks as they go down. But that takes care of my OHL playoff update on today's episode, Blackhawks fans. Coming up in just a minute, I still got to get into Mailbag Monday. Real quick, first though, I got to talk to you all about Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone like yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Well, it's easy. Just use Indeed. Because when it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites, because Indeed's sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. And they make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. So you can skip all those unnecessary questions and steps, and now you can speed up your hiring process and also get a $75 sponsored job credit by just visiting Indeed.com/lockedon right now. And make sure to support our show by saying you heard about Indeed right here on this very podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Back here, excuse me, Blackhawks fans, back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Just wanted to say thank you to everyone for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your day. For your second listen, go and check out the new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night, until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale with Locked On NHL Game Night. And again, you can find NHL Game Night right now on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. Segment 3, Mailbag Monday, per usual, to kick off the week. And a reminder, if you're watching this or listening to this right here, right now, and have a Blackhawks-related question or even just a question of any sorts, make sure to drop that below in the comment section. You can reach out on any one of my social media platforms or also email lockedonblackhawks@gmail.com. Let's try to rack up the questions for next Monday, as it will be the final Mailbag Monday of the 24-25 regular season. First question that I have here today comes from Isaac Guerrero, who actually has two questions. Isaac, I greatly appreciate you always reaching out with your questions on a weekly basis. More of you need to be exactly like Isaac. Isaac asked, say you had one roster spot left starting 2026 and you have two centers, same height, point production, face-off percentage, $2.5 million for 25-year-old Veleno, or $4.2 million, 30-year-old Jason Dickinson. Who gets the spot if you had to pick one? I guess I didn't know that Jason Dickinson and Joe Veleno are the same height and same weight. I don't know exactly about their point production or whatnot. It is a fascinating question considering where the Blackhawks are at. Veleno under contract next year, as is Jason Dickinson. I see where you're going with this, Isaac, because when looking at the Blackhawks, how they're probably going to go about their roster next year, they probably don't need both of those guys. We know Jason Dickinson isn't going to be part of the long-term future. And it's going to be interesting to see whether or not the Blackhawks are intrigued whatsoever about giving him another contract extension whenever his current deal does expire. I think that's probably unlikely given where he's at in his career, his age, and just the timeline of the Blackhawks rebuild. Even though he's a veteran leader who goes about his business the right way, I still think the Blackhawks are probably going to have to make a decision to cut ties with Jason Dickinson, if I had to guess, whenever his deal expires, and they might even try to trade him potentially at next year's deadline. Veleno, I think it's unlikely that he's part of the puzzle here in Chicago, given that he's 25. You kind of know what he is at this point in time, but I will say, he's looked a lot better and has kind of found his footing here with the Blackhawks over the last couple of weeks. I still think Jason Dickinson winds up getting the nod here in terms of if Kyle Davidson has his back up against the wall and has to choose one of them. I think it winds up being Jason Dickinson because he's the more trusted upon player at the stage of his career. Even though Veleno may be a puzzle piece, I think it's a pretty low chance that he is. And quite honestly, you can just find more guys like Joe Veleno to replace him. It's going to be fascinating if the Blackhawks do have to make a choice between either of those two guys. I would go with Jason Dickinson, even if he is the older player and the one who's making a little bit more. I think he's the one who's just trusted upon a little bit, but quite honestly, in actuality, Isaac, neither of these two probably have a piece in the Blackhawks' future, and it really won't make too much of a difference one way or the other where they ultimately choose. I would probably choose Jason Dickinson. I could see the organization choosing Veleno, though, for the case that I just made, where Veleno, even if it's a small chance, he does have a chance to be part of the future. Whereas Jason Dickinson, I don't think there's really a chance. And we've also seen him come back down to earth here this season, which I think we all kind of expected his campaign 2 seasons ago to be a little bit of an outlier. Very interesting question here. I would go with Jason Dickinson. But the second question from Isaac is on a pretty similar basis here, asking, say you had one roster spot left starting 25-26, and you have Lukas Reichel, Colton Dach, and Landon Slager. All three players 22 years old. All three make about $1 million. Who gets the final spot if you had to pick one today? For me, this one's easy. This one to me is Lukas Reichel. I still think he has the highest upside of all of these three players with the way that he can skate. Yeah, Landon Slager can skate that way too, but I do believe Lukas Reichel has the better offensive abilities, has the better hands, and the higher playmaking ability. Even if we've yet to see it consistently at the NHL, I don't think how the Blackhawks have gone about their business the last 2 years have helped Lukas Reichel whatsoever. I don't think having a defensive-minded head coach like Luke Richardson, who utilized Lukas Reichel as a center iceman, which I don't believe is his position, and also threw him down in the fourth line consistently, I don't think that did him any favors. I know there are some people out there who are saying Lukas Reichel is never going to be anything and you just need to let go of it. And I accept that that could be a possibility. However, when Reichel has 1 year left on his current deal, we're going to get hopefully a legitimate NHL head coach in there to help kind of the structure of this team, because clearly the coaching staff has not been good enough for a long, long time. I think Lukas Reichel's skills are worth giving him one more opportunity in the final year of his contract next year in a much better situation with hopefully a much better roster in a situation where he can actually thrive. That's why I would go with Lukas Reichel, because he hasn't had those things so far really since being an NHLer, and I do think he has the highest upside. What I believe the organization will most likely do is go with Landon Slaggert. I think Landon Slaggert is over Colton Dach at this point in time. I think he's the better skater. I think he's more inclined to make plays on the penalty kill. Colton Dach to me just really isn't all that much, except for a big body Blackhawks fan. So I would choose Lukas Reichel. If the organization is faced with this question, I think they choose Landon Slaggert. For me, I'd go Reichel, Slaggert, Dach in that order. I think Dach has the lowest upside of all three of those players. Next question comes from Andy Allam 4357, who asked, how high would you be prepared to go to resign Donato? 3x5? Every game that goes by, he seems to add another $500,000. Yeah. Donato is definitely doing himself some favors with how he's been playing over the last couple of months. I've expressed my concerns more so about giving Ryan Donato a third year. That's where my concern is, because those seasons are going to be more crucial as we move forward. I would be okay with overpaying Ryan Donato if he wanted to do a 2-year deal. If they're going to go above 4.25 for a 3-year deal, that's where, even with the salary cap going up, that's where I get a little bit uncomfortable. I would be prepared to give Ryan Donato, and maybe I'm crazy for this, Blackhawks fans, let me know in the comment section. I'd be prepared to give Ryan Donato $5 million for 2 years. If he's willing to do a 2-year deal, maybe even a little bit more. But I only want him on a 2-year deal because that gives the Blackhawks more flexibility. And I know in terms of dollars, it's really not going to be that influential towards the Blackhawks cap situation in 3 years. But I just think in terms of roster structure and opportunities for young players and whatnot, having Donato on the books for only 2 more years, it's just more comfortable to me personally. Let me know if you feel the same way below in the comment section. There was just a weird evaluation I saw. I think it was from Frank Saravalli of the Daily Faceoff, saying that Donato's next projected contract was like 2 years at $2.5 million or something along those lines. And they've always undervalued Donato's trade value during the deadline as well. So maybe the deal winds up being lower than we expect. Maybe it's because this is, everyone's recognizing, truly an outlier type of season from Donato. But anything over $4 million for 3 years would make me would make me uncomfortable. I would more so prefer to go higher AAV, less term on Donato's next deal, should he sign with the Blackhawks. Next question comes from, I know I'm running long here a little bit, Blackhawks fans, Miller Nagel 82, who asked, Wyatt Kaiser and Louis Crevier, both going to be RFAs this summer. With all the defensemen in the system, do they both come back? Just one? Neither? What are your thoughts? Well, Wyatt Kaiser definitely, the organization is definitely more tied to Wyatt Kaiser than they are Louis Crevier. Kaiser undoubtedly has the higher upside of the two, and we've really seen him come into his own, I think, here in the last month or two. So Wyatt Kaiser, I've talked about, he's in an interesting position because he's in a spot to potentially be the odd man out type of defenseman on this Blackhawks blue line. I hope that's not the case. I hope they don't wind up trading him in the summer. I would like to see what he has a little bit more. But because of the sheer numbers on D for the Blackhawks, and I know they are higher on Rinzel, Levshinov, Vlasic, Kevin Korchinski, even with his struggles, he has the higher upside, I believe, than Kaiser. So because of that, that could make Kaiser vulnerable. I fully expect him, though, to be brought back this year as an RFA. Louis Crevier is the really interesting one. I think because Rinzel and Levshinov are both on the NHL scene as righties, Connor Murphy's, here for another year, I wouldn't be surprised if Louis Crevier does not wind up re-signing as an RFA. I think it could go either way at this point in time, but assuredly Wyatt Kaiser takes priority over Louis Crevier in that department. And if they feel like they don't have the room to take both, bring both back, they'll definitely choose Kaiser over Crevier. Last question comes from Wes I34616, who emailed in the podcast last week, actually. And Wes, I apologize for missing this. I had a deep slew of questions last week, but Wes asked, if Connor Bedard finishes this season with less points than last year, is this season a disappointment? Now, Bedard does have points in 4 of his last 5 games. He now has 60 on the season, 11th teenager in NHL history with back-to-back 60-point seasons to start their career. Incredible stuff out of Bedsy, even though it has been a slower production than I think we would have liked to see in his sophomore season. But again, for all the reasons I even just outlined with Reichel a few minutes ago, I don't think Connor Bedard has been put in a situation to thrive with this Blackhawks squad. He now is just 1 point shy of what he accumulated last year as a rookie, albeit he has played in 9 more games here this season. But I do expect him in his last 5 games to accumulate at least 2 points and post a new career best in that department. But let's say even if he didn't, it would have been disappointing, but I wouldn't have been upset. That sounds like a father-y statement from me. I would have been disappointed, but I wouldn't have been upset. Again, because of just all the things going on with the Blackhawks, the lack of a top line, the lack of Tyler Bertuzzi's consistency, a new head coach, a lot of new faces coming onto the scene, a lot of teammates getting traded. Taylor Hall, who was a guy he was supposed to play with, he winds up getting dealt. A lot of things have worked against Connor Bedard so far in the NHL, and he still put up 60 points in both seasons. So, yeah, it would have been upsetting, but it wouldn't have been anything to like seriously come to a conclusion on that Connor Bedard like might not be the player we think he can be or whatsoever. No, it's way bigger than that. But despite everything going on, Connor Bedard is still finding ways to put up points at a consistent rate, still leading the team in points here this season, which I think is pretty impressive for a 19-year-old who's gone through all the things that he's gone through. But that's going to take care of today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, everyone. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Be sure to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube if you haven't done so already, and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free wherever you may be listening to your podcast. That way you can get the show as soon as it's uploaded each and every day. Until the next episode, Blackhawks fans, enjoy the rest of your Mondays. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.